What's up, guys? This is Art Fixers again. In the shop, we got another one. We have an 03, 04, I don't know, Cadillac Escalade with the 6.0 in it. Customer's complaint on this one is put the key in it, turns it, and it cranks and cranks and cranks and cranks and cranks. Cranks so much that they killed the battery. So I got the battery charger on it. It's getting charged. So figure I'll bring you guys along. Let's get the scanner out. Let's look at some PIDs, and let's see where we go from here. So let's go. Let's see what we got here. $208,303. Let's see if we can crank it. Let's see if it starts. Watch. Oh, we got nothing. Battery's still dead. Alright, second time. Let's see. Yep, I would say it cranks and cranks and doesn't start. Let's try it again. So on the GMs, the RPM needles don't move. Like on some of the Fords, you can see the RPM needle come up a little bit, like 200 or 300 RPMs. And on the GMs, they don't. Most of them don't do that. So let's fire up the scanner here. Let's plug this one in. This is a Cadillac. I don't know. I think this is an 03, 04. Let's see 04. Should auto ID itself. So there we go. We got an 04 Cadillac 6.0. See if there's any codes. I don't know if there's gonna be any codes because it was almost dead. So display codes. Loss of ECMB communications. No, EBCM and RTD communications. Alright, so that's our electronic brake control module. I wouldn't start. That wouldn't cause it to not at least start. At least I don't think so. Let's look at some display data. Engine data. Okay, so we just kind of scroll through here. Just make sure that the coolant temp isn't reading like -40 or something crazy. Same thing with the air temp. This car has been sitting all day, so that should be pretty much normal. So you want to see a rise in the mass airflow. Right now we're in open loop. Yeah, at least the oxygen sensors are at least talking. Alright, so let's go back up to RPM signal. Let's look at that. So this line right here says, see if that'll focus. It says RPM speed. Right now we're at 0. As I crank it, it should at least show at least cranking speed about 200 or 300 RPMs. Alright, so we got nothing. So it should say desired idle should be 1,000 RPMs. And you also saw a drop there in manifold pressure. Alright, so let's talk about this. So on these GMs here, without an RPM signal, the PCM doesn't know when to fire the injectors or when to fire the spark plug. So it's just going to crank and crank and crank and crank until you run down the battery. So on these particular LSs, to do testing right at the crankshaft sensor, it's like almost impossible because it's behind the starter and you can't even get to it. So on these LS engines, to test right at the actual sensor itself, at the crankshaft sensor, you have to take the starter off and then be able to crank the engine, but it's just too much of a pain. So what we can do is we can find the PCM here, right here by the battery where it lives. We can go to the connector and we can test from the PCM whether or not if it's receiving signal from the crankshaft sensor. But you also have to remember too, you can have a broken wire between the PCM and the crankshaft sensor, so you have to keep that in mind too. So sometimes this is the best scenario to do it testing right now, and then once we We can finagle it, maybe unplug it, but I know it's a real huge pain. So what we're going to be looking for is, this is the connector for the crankshaft sensor, and it's got all the corresponding code or wire colors, and then what each wire color stands for. The crankshaft signal, which that should be I believe a square wave, 5024 tooth, I think it's on this one. The low reference, and then the 12 volt reference. And then I went ahead and printed this up here. So this is the PCM connector, and this is going to be the blue connector. So I think this one has a green connector and a blue connector, and then I just went ahead and highlighted. So on one side of the engine where the connector's at, you have your wires, and then on this side of the engine where the PCM at, it should be a signal, a straight wire. There's no connections between there. And then again, we have your corresponding, see the highlight. So then, and then also too, I went ahead and printed up just your regular fault tree type of diagnostic rundown of once you check this, is this good? Once you check this, is it good or is it not good? And then so I got this, but this is pretty standard stuff. It's just a signal, a wire signal, low reference, and then a 12 volt reference. It's pretty easy. So what we'll do is, let me get this stuff, let me get the PCM open, because it is kind of a pain to get to right here. And then once I get that ready, I'll bring you guys back. Let's go. So the PCM, this right here on this truck, lives underneath this plastic cover right here, and then you have your two big wires that come out of the bottom, the two big connectors. So let's go ahead and take this off. We can actually take the computer out and kind of lay it off to the side right here, and we can back probe into those wires. Let's do that. So we got the big cover off, and then this is held down by a little connector, or I'm sorry, a little clip. This is also kind of hard to get off. Now once we got the connector or the PCM up, you'll see right here how it says blue. So that's the blue side connector, and I think the other side is green. So these little plastic covers break all the time, and most of the time they're not even there. So we'll do our best, try not to break this. Now we can get to all the pin numbers. So let me take this little cover off here. See if I can do that. Alright, I got him out, and I didn't even break it. That's the best part. So now we have to find out which pin we have. Let me put it back down. Come on. There's like no room. Of course, working on it with one hand, I hate to do that. Okay, well at least we can read it right there. So you look here, these are all numbers, all down this line. So we have to find out the right pin number, the right wire number, make sure the wire color matches, and then we can back probe into here and get a signal. Let's do that now. Okay, got myself set up here using the Vantage Pro here, and we're just gonna check for our 12 volt signal first. Let's go ahead and do that first. Let me get this thing kind of dialed in here. What's going on here? Oh, I'm getting caught up. Right here. Okay, you guys see that? Maybe, hopefully. So what we're gonna do, let me go turn the key on. Alright, battery's got enough charge on it. Turn off the headlights, so we should be good. That's a text, don't worry about that. So right now we're going to look for the 12 volt reference, which is pin number 2, and it's light green, 12 volt reference. So we're going to find pin number 2, which is right there. I know you guys can't see, but you guys gotta trust me on this one. Let's see if I can get this up. So there's a light green with a black stripe, but there is a light green right there. So we're real carefully just back probing as far as we can go down. So right there I got, can you guys see that? It's a glare. 11.77. Battery's a little bit undercharged. Maybe make it better, I don't know. Make it better or worse, I don't know. Who cares? Okay, so then we're gonna check our low reference. So it's gonna be the yellow and black. Yellow and black. So we tested this light green, which is C, which is that would it would be that one on the connector. So the next one we're gonna check here is the yellow and black, which is the low reference voltage, which is ground. So I shouldn't have any voltage here. So by back pin, it's going to be number 21, yellow and black. So if I back probe it here, all the way down, and I got 0.01, which is basically ground. And then the big ticket here is pin A, the first pin. It's going to be my sensor signal, my crankshaft sensor signal, again, which should be a square wave, which I don't think we're gonna have because we don't have a RPM signal. Okay, so now we got our lab scope all set up here, and so again what we're going after is it's gonna be pin number A. It's gonna be a dark blue with a white wire, and that one is gonna be pin number 12. So that's your signal, crankshaft signal. Let's crank it, let's see what happens. Okay, so since we don't have any signal coming out, now next thing we're gonna have to go down to the sensor and do some checks there at the connector, and we'll see if we can get to it, hopefully. And probably just gotta put a sensor in this thing. So it has a bad sensor. Let's do that now. So we're gonna leave the key on. We're gonna raise it up. So for those of you who don't know, crankshaft sensor lives right behind the starter. I believe this is a wire here. This is the wire here. I wonder if I can disconnect that somehow. See if I can disconnect it. Maybe just get like a long pick and see if I can just pick it off and pull it down. Let's try that. Let's see if I can even see the dang thing. Almost touch it, but you can't. Get some light up there somehow. Let's see what I'm doing. See if we got a long screwdriver, maybe. Nope. Something like this in there. That's not gonna work. I really don't want to poke wires. Oh man, so close. just see a sliver of it. Oh, hey, look at that. It came off. So you can see that's how I reached up in there, and I unplugged that, and the fuel pump I think just kicked on, and that thing is all oily. Well, good, at least we got somewhere. Jeez. Let's find good ground. Let's find that. Let's see if you guys can pick that up right there. So that's 0 volts, 4 volts, 8 volts, 10 volts, or 12 volts. So the first one, that green wire, should have been our 12 volts. So right there we have 12 volts. And the next one should already go down to 0, which it did. And the next one is going to be our crank signal, which we have. So what we can do here also is we can verify with our scope here, verify we have a good, obviously we know we have a good 12 volt power. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have a good ground. So if we front probe one side of the ground and then real carefully front probe the other side, we should, if you can see that, I don't know if you can see that on camera, it's right down at the bottom, we have a 12 volt signal. And then if we go through our scope and take the ground and put it on the crankshaft signal wire, so we can tell the computer that we're giving it 12 volts through the computer, and make sure the computer sees that, and the fuel pump should turn on too. So if we plug this in, fuel pump turned on. As you can see here, so it's giving the computer a signal. So with that being said, we did all of our checks down here, and so now we have a bad crankshaft sensor. So we gotta lower the truck back down, take the battery off, disconnect the battery cable, and then drop the starter, and it's like right there. It's one little 10mm bolt. So let's do that. Alright, so this is a 14mm, I think. Nope. 13mm. Why does one look different? There's a 13. So one's a 13 and one's a 14. But that broke loose. So that's a 13. Whoa. 13mm. They should be both 14s. Let's take this little side cover off. Or at least loosen it, get it out of the way. There's not a lot of room between the bolt and this plastic shield. There's your 10mm bolt. And then that might give us a little bit of room maybe. That's a 14. Or it has a different starter. Let's see if we can just move the starter back. These Chevys, they don't give you much room. Let's see if we can just kind of hang it right there, and I'll get you guys a closer look. So there is your crankshaft sensor, 10mm. It's black. Let's take that out. I want to block you guys here for a second. There's your 10mm bolt. And that sensor just pops right out. The O-ring will sometimes hold it in place. There you go. And then we just want to make sure that there's no damage or anything that we saw here. Alright. And we're going to clean out the hole. Make sure nothing is going to hurt us from installing it. Take a little bit of oil. Coat the new O-ring. And this only goes in one way. Put the bolt back in it. Remember, it's a little 10mm, so you don't gotta smoke these little 10mm down. Okay. Now don't forget to plug it in. Get the starter back up in place, and don't forget your shield. Let's clean that connector. Alright, she's clean. Come on. Let's get the connector on the other side. See if we can plug it in. There, she's plugged in. Let's get the 14 started first. Just get this installed in place, the little 10mm. Okay. Let's get the 13 for the other side. Tighten up the 14. That's tight. Alright, so she should start now. Alright guys, so we got the new crankshaft sensor installed, and it should fire up. So let's go see if we can fire this thing up. Let's see here. There we go, she fired up. And then what I'll do here is I'll bring up the obviously the RPM signal. So that works. Alright. So there you go guys, that's how you I guess diagnose a crank no start problem. On this one we found a bad crankshaft sensor. Went through all steps, we checked the PCM side, we checked it at the connector. Fortunately we were able to disconnect it. Usually we can't do that, it's so hard to do that. This ended up being a bad crankshaft sensor with 208,000 miles, that's probably the going rate. And then we fixed it, put it all back together, started, everything's all good to go. So hope you guys liked the video. Please click the subscribe button, click the bell notification, and remember guys, you keep breaking them, I'll keep fixing them. Thanks for watching, catch you next time.